November the 3rd, 1896, Washington, D.C. When McKinley is elected president for the first time, he's the 25th holder of the highest office in the land. The new president, now aged 53, has come a long way. Born in Niles, Ohio, in January 1843, McKinley is the 7th of 9 children. His father is an iron founder. In June 1861, McKinley enlists as a private in the Union Army at the start of the U.S. Civil War. He's posted to Western Virginia, where he spends a year fighting small Confederate units. His commanding officer at the time is Colonel Rutherford B. Hayes, who will become U.S. President himself in 1877. Hayes is mightily impressed with both McKinley's ability and bravery and soon promotes him to sergeant. A short time later, after heading a mule team delivering rations under fire at Antietam, he's promoted again, this time to second lieutenant. McKinley continues to serve the Union cause with great distinction and finishes in September 1865 with the rank of major. He then enrolls at law school and is admitted to the bar in 1867. He also begins to take a keen interest in politics, campaigning enthusiastically on behalf of General Ulysses S. Grant, who was elected president in 1867. In 1877, McKinley, by now a successful lawyer, is elected to the House of Representatives. He's set on a career in politics. Meanwhile, in downtown Detroit, Michigan, life is becoming increasingly hard for a 4-year-old boy, Leon Czolgosz, one of 7 children born to Polish immigrant parents. The family will move frequently throughout Leon's early life as they try to better themselves. In 1891, the family are in Cleveland, Ohio. In this same year, McKinley is elected state governor of Ohio. He'd lost his seat in Congress the previous year after introducing the McKinley Bill, a highly unpopular measure of tariffs on imported goods. Meanwhile, Czolgosz has just been taken back as a machinist at a wire and steel factory after being fired for taking part in a strike for higher wages. Around this time, he begins taking an interest in radical socialism and gets involved with a group railing against capitalism and those they regard as wealthy and privileged. In particular, Czolgosz takes a vehement dislike to the American system of democratic government. In 1893, McKinley is re-elected governor of Ohio. 3 years later, he leaves office and stands as the Republican Party's U.S. presidential candidate. After a highly effective and well-financed campaign, he wins convincingly. But within a short time of McKinley taking office, he's attracted the baleful attention of Czolgosz. The would-be anarchist despises him, regarding him as a hypocrite, enthralled to the country's wealthy and powerful elite. By now, the US is at war with Spain. The war begins in April 1898, over Cuba's demand for independence from Spanish rule and the sinking of the American battleship USS Maine in Havana Harbor. Cuban nationalists have brought the country to the brink of civil war. This provokes the US into calling for Spain to resolve the situation peacefully and then withdraw, leaving the Cubans to govern themselves. Spain responds by declaring war on the US. The conflict lasts around 100 days, during which time the US Navy defeats the Spanish fleet in a series of engagements off Cuba and the Philippines. Spain finally sues for peace in August 1898, leaving Cuba independent. but at the same time now firmly within the US sphere of influence. 3 years later, McKinley has been re-elected president, winning by an even greater margin than he had during his first term. But as he takes office for the second time, McKinley faces mounting industrial unrest, as across the US more and more workers are standing up for their rights, demanding better pay and conditions and a shorter working week. Many of them bitterly resent the fact that while they struggle to survive, the country's elite seems to grow even more rich and powerful. Their anger is fueled by a number of newspapers and magazines known as the Yellow Press. Among the more strident of these is the Journal, owned, ironically, by one of the country's richest men, William Randolph Hearst. And when, on April 10th, 1901, the Journal publishes an editorial saying, "If bad institutions and bad men can be got rid of only by killing them, then the killing must be done," it is music to the anarchists' ears. Hearst would claim later that these words had been published without his knowledge, but it was too late. To someone like Czołgosz, the editorial is tantamount to a call to arms. Now, as the anarchists become bolder and more outspoken, Czołgosz is determined to make his mark. May the 6th, 1901, Cleveland, Ohio. Emma Goldman, regarded as the high priestess of anarchism, addresses the Franklin Liberal Club. Although not exactly condoning violence, she draws short of criticizing anyone who uses it to support oppressed workers. Among the attentive audience is a young man now living on a farm a few miles from the city. It's Leon Czołgosz. Convinced that the US is corrupt and that the ruling classes are enriching themselves by exploiting the workers, Czołgosz is fired with a burning desire to do something. He's fascinated by the assassination of King Umberto I of Italy on July 29, 1900, shot to death by the anarchist Gaetano Bresci. Bresci is sentenced to life imprisonment the following month. A year later, he's found dead in his cell. No one ever knew if he'd killed himself or had died at the hands of the guards. Here, thought Czołgosz, is a man prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice for his beliefs. Now he too wants to do something for the cause, something which will make him an anarchist legend like Bresci. But what? Then he has his big idea. August 31st, 1901, Buffalo, New York. Czołgosz checks into a hotel on the east side of the city. He's going to assassinate William McKinley, the President of the United States. Those around McKinley are only too well aware of the loathing the anarchists have for him. They know his life will always be at risk. The previous year, an enterprising US Secret Service agent had unearthed what amounted to an anarchist hit list, compiled in 1898. Included among those marked for death are King Umberto of Italy and the President of the United States, William McKinley. But the President himself will hear none of it. "Who would want to shoot me?" he's reported to have said. "The American people are too intelligent for that." Little could he have known what would await him in Buffalo. Czołgosz's hotel is not far from the Pan American Exposition, a major new exhibition site. And, as he's well aware, McKinley is due in town any time now for a visit. September the 4th, 1901, Buffalo, New York. Czołgosz buys a 6-shot nickel-plated .32 caliber Johnson automatic handgun from a Main Street hardware store. It's the same type that had been used to kill King Umberto a year earlier. Later the same day, Czołgosz visits the exposition and once again wanders about, checking McKinley's route. He is determined to assassinate the president. September the 5th, Buffalo, New York, 9 a.m. Today is President's Day. It's a national holiday, and around 50,000 visitors are expected at the Pan American Exposition. But one of them, a 28-year-old anarchist called Leon Czolgosz, has murder on his mind. He's now trying to get close to the grandstand from which McKinley is due to make a speech. 9:30 a.m. The President, the First Lady, and the rest of their entourage arrive and take their place on the grandstand in the esplanade. McKinley starts to speak. Czolgosz is waiting for him to finish. Then he plans to rush forward and shoot him. 10:15 a.m. When McKinley's done, he's escorted off the stage to his carriage. Seeing his chance, Czolgosz moves into position. Then he stops, a few yards away, confused. He's looking at two men, but they're both identically dressed in top hats and black frock coats. Czolgosz can't tell them apart. While he's trying to work it out, the carriage moves off. He's missed his chance. The president will now spend the rest of the day at the exposition, taking in the major highlights such as a reenacted battle between early US troops and Native American Indians. He will not leave until the end of a spectacular firework display later that evening. He's had a narrow escape, for now. But as Czolgosz is well aware, McKinley is due to return to the exposition for a second visit the following day. September the 6th, Niagara Falls, midday. President McKinley and his entourage are visiting Niagara Falls, a short distance from Buffalo. He's due back at the Pan American Exposition that afternoon. 3:55 p.m. Temple of Music, Exposition Center. Czolgosz, who's been trailing McKinley since he arrived at the station, slips into the Temple of Music behind him. McKinley and his entourage are so busy posing for photographs that no one notices him. 4 p.m. The reception begins and McKinley starts shaking hands with the guests lined up to meet him. Czolgosz joins them. 4:07 p.m. Czolgosz reaches McKinley and extends both hands towards him. Suddenly, before anyone, including the president's bodyguards, realize what's happening, two shots ring out. McKinley staggers and slumps to the ground, while a shocked bodyguard knocks Czolgosz off his feet. Within minutes, McKinley is put in an electric ambulance and rushed to the Exposition Hospital at the Elmwood Avenue gate. Meanwhile, as word spreads around the exposition, there's pandemonium. People run headlong for the Temple of Music, some of them intent on lynching Czolgosz on the spot. But he's quickly hustled away to police headquarters. There he freely admits that he meant to kill McKinley, saying he'd done it because he didn't think one man should have so much power, while others have none. At first, McKinley seems to respond well to treatment. One of the bullets which hit him is found and extracted. But despite their best efforts, doctors are unable to locate the second. Ironically, one of the world's first X-ray machines is on display at the exposition. However, the president's doctors are reluctant to use it in case it produces unforeseen side effects. Over the next few days, McKinley grows ever weaker. Now everyone fears the worst. September the 14th, Pan Exposition Hospital, Buffalo, 2:15 a.m. President McKinley dies after gangrene sets in. 13 hours later, Vice President Theodore Roosevelt is sworn in as president. he takes the oath at a mansion on Delaware Avenue, Buffalo. Confident that McKinley was on the road to recovery, he departed from Buffalo 2 days earlier for a camping and walking trip in the Adirondack Mountains. There had been no way of contacting him to let him know the worst had happened. The next day, McKinley's body is removed for the journey back to Washington. Once there, huge, grief-stricken crowds turn out to watch the slow, stately procession through the rain-soaked streets. Then it's back to McKinley's hometown, Canton, Ohio, for the final funeral service and burial on September the 18th. The new president, Theodore Roosevelt, is waiting there for the train to arrive. News of McKinley's death sends shock waves around the world. Newspapers in London are printed with black borders. Ships in the German Navy fly their flags at half-mast, and in Rome, the Pope suspends all audiences. September the 23rd, City Hall Courtroom, Buffalo, New York, 10:15 a.m. The trial of Czołgosz begins. He's charged with first-degree murder. During the short ensuing proceedings, Czołgosz's sanity is called into question. But as he doesn't take the stand in his own defense, the court is left to draw its own conclusions. September the 24th, 4:25 p.m. Faced with the irrefutable evidence of Czołgosz's guilt, together with his ready admission he'd killed the president, the jury declare him guilty of murder in the first degree. They also find him sane. September the 26th, 2 p.m. Czołgosz is sentenced to death for what the presiding judge, Justice Truman C. White, describes as a crime which shocked and outraged the moral sense of the civilized world. September the 27th, Auburn State Prison, 3:05 a.m. Czołgosz arrives by train after a 5-hour journey from Buffalo. An angry mob awaits him, but he's protected from attack by a phalanx of guards. The man who'd assassinated a president has now just a month left to live. October the 29th, Auburn State Prison, 7:05 a.m. With guards gripping him tightly by the arms, Leon Czołgosz is led into the execution chamber. He's strapped into the electric chair. It's mounted on a platform covered in rubber. As the last adjustments are being made, Czołgosz suddenly calls out, "I am not sorry. I did this for the working people. My only regret is that I haven't been able to see my father." Then he falls silent. – 7:12 a.m. The signal is given. A switch thrown, and 1,700 volts surge through Czołgosz for a full 45 seconds. He slumps in the chair. 7:14 a.m. Czołgosz is pronounced dead. A short time later, he's buried in the prison cemetery. Following McKinley's assassination, the US Congress demands that presidential security be stepped up. From now on, the president will be guarded at all times by members of the Secret Service. But the fact is that no matter how popular or how well protected a US president might be, as history shows, there is always a risk that someone who wishes him harm will get through.